All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I show 11 o'clock. I want to welcome you to the webinar, Human Resource Laws and Regulations, presented by the Temecula Valley Chamber of Commerce. Before we begin today's webinar, we have a few Zoom reminders to make this an effective meeting for all of us. One, we encourage you to ask questions. I know Patrick, our speaker, will explain how and where you can ask your questions. The second is you will only be able to see the presenter and their presentations. We can't see you. Now, I would like to welcome our presenter. Our speaker brings over 40 years of experience in the private sector, where he held such positions as general manager of an industrial processing facility, general manager of a regional trash and refuse company, and various sales management positions. He spent the last 20 years in the outsourced human resources industry, opening his own HR consulting firm in 2015. He instructs human resource classes at the Cal State San Bernardino, but also at California Baptist University and Chapman University in the Associated Business Schools. He is currently the faculty advisor to CSUSB's student chapter of Society for Human Resource Management, a student organization focused on promoting the human resource industry and profession. He holds the Senior Professional in Human Resources certification from the Human Resource Certification Institute, as well as the Senior Certified Professional from the Society of Human Resources. He provides HR consulting for the Small Business Development Center and has since 2019. Now, please welcome our presenter, Patrick Flaherty. Patrick?
Well, thank you, Brooke. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to, let me share my screen. I'm not as tech savvy as Brooke, but here we go. And come on, there we go. Anyway, good morning. Welcome to the webinar on human resource and workplace updates for 2021. It's not fun doing business in the state of California, okay? And I don't want to scare anybody, but you'll see some of the legislation that's gone into effect and will go into effect for small businesses. And I'm not sure how many attendees we have on the Zoom meeting today, but suffice to say, the preference would be if we've got a lot of folks just to email me, and I'll give you my contact information, your specific questions if you have any. And then I will reply via email. That way I individualize the responses. Some of the questions may not apply to some of the attendees on today's meeting. But in any event, welcome, and let's get started. So some of the things about the Small Business Development Centers, we'll do counseling. This is all at no cost for small and startup businesses. We do training, such as today's webinar. We have some resources where we can connect you to things that we do not do. Okay, and again, a little bit about me. The big things Brooke has already mentioned, but the bottom point here is important, is that I'm not an attorney. So I can't give you legal advice, and that's one of the things the SBDC does not do. We don't give tax advice, we don't do taxes, we don't do insurance, and we don't do legal. So I'm not an attorney. I can just give you my interpretation of what's going on in the workplace. And if you've got some questions, I would certainly reach out to your labor law attorney, or I can put you in touch with somebody that can give you a more definitive position. That being said, I don't want to scare anybody. And again, we don't do insurances. But one thing that is not in the PowerPoint slide is that you guys need to reach out to your brokers to make sure that you got adequate workers' comp coverage due to the COVID situation. Now, if they're working from home, we'll address that later. That's not an issue. But if they're coming to the workplace, you need to make sure that your workers' comp insurance also has some type of umbrella coverage. Because if I catch the COVID at your workplace, again, difficult to prove not, and I go home and I give it to the wife or I give it to one of the kids and they die, again, I don't want to be overly morbid here, but if something happens to a family member, they're going to come after you because someone's always got to pay, someone with a deep pocket. So my suggestion to you is you reach out to your insurance broker, make sure you've got enough coverage for your workers' comp when it comes to COVID so that it doesn't impact your business to where, drastic things happen. Okay, let's keep going on a positive note. So today's agenda, I want to talk about what may still be in effect. We'll look at what happened in December. We'll talk about your COVID-19 prevention program, and I have question marks. That's something that you need to have in place. We'll talk about some emergency COVID-19 regulations. I'll give you some sample questions, and then 3 other significant compliance issues as we closed 2020. I put their closed questions depending upon how much time we have. We only have an hour. I don't want to PowerPoint you to death, and you can read certainly what I put up on the screen. But again, if you've got questions, I would encourage you to reach out to me. What I can do is if you email me at the contact information, I can give you a copy of this PowerPoint. So you don't need to take notes. You can just sit back and relax and enjoy. And then I can send this to you, or Brooke can send it to you as well. I'll send it to Brooke and then she'll send it to everybody. Okay, so in December, Governor Newsom, latest executive order on the 14th of January, and I've got to move my little box here. Okay, signed another executive order, modifies the COVID-19 exposure exclusion periods, okay, to align with the California Department of Public Health. So let's look at the exclusion or the exposure exclusion periods, okay. So the new one, okay, is, I'm sorry, Brooke, how do I move my little dialogue box? There we go. I'll just move it over here. Okay. Adopts any applicable quarantine or isolation period recommended by the California Department of Public Health. Okay, so there's some quarantine guidelines that are in place and are still in effect. As you can tell, that most of the counties are still in the purple tier. So we can't do a lot of things that we had hoped that we'd be able to do by now. But in any case, the local health officer has jurisdiction over the workplace. So if Governor Newsom issues an executive order and the local health agency is something that's a little more lax, Governor Newsom's executive order would have precedent. Okay. So the quarantine guidance, okay, if you've got, again, any asymptomatic close contacts, within 6 feet of an infected person for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period, you can quarantine, you may discontinue the quarantine after 10 days. It used to be 14 days. Now, again, how are you going to know if you've been exposed? Hopefully someone is going to tell you that they've been exposed and the duration of their quarantine. But now it's only 10 days rather than 14 days with or without testing. So you're asking yourself as an employer, how do I know? What can I do? Well, we'll get to that here as we go through the PowerPoint deck. Okay. Again, some more information. Okay. I'll let you read some of those bullet points there, but it tells you, again, you got to use surgical masks at all times during work. And we'll talk about when you don't have to wear those masks at work. Can you require your employees to wear a mask in the workplace? Absolutely. Okay. Now, can you require them to take a test to return to work? And that's a gray area. Okay. I personally would like people that have been quarantined to get another COVID test to say that they could come back to the workplace, but that's a gray area because who's going to pay for it? So again, that's an area you'd want to talk to your legal counsels. Can I, according to the law, can I request them to give me a negative test before they return to the workplace? Okay. Let's keep going here. Okay. So again, local health jurisdictions may be more restrictive than the state. So depending on the county, be it Riverside County, San Bernardino County, if they still want you to quarantine 14 days, then you're going to have to do the 14 days. So whatever if they're more restrictive, then that's the ones you have to abide by. Okay. Okay. Again, CDH still recommends a quarantine period for 14 days. Okay. So persons who reside in a high risk, now I'll let someone else say that word, skilled nursing facilities, prison, jails, shelters. As of now, if you're over 75, you're eligible for the vaccine. And again, that's a different personal decision that you're going to have to make. The next one would be 65 and older. And it would also include some industries such as education and continual vaccines for your health and first line responders. Okay. Let's read that. But wait, do you have a COVID-19 prevention plan to reflect the new guidance? Just like your illness and injury prevention plan that you need to have as an employer, now you need to have a COVID-19 prevention plan. It's required by law. And the purpose of human resources, in my opinion, is to protect the company assets, both literally and figuratively. So I'm saying that you need to get a COVID-19 plan to protect your business, because one is you need to be compliant, and two, you need to protect your business. Okay, so we'll talk about the COVID prevention plan. You're required to have a site-specific COVID-19 prevention program that includes safety procedures to reduce the risk of exposure to an identified pandemic. Okay, this is in addition to your IIPP. It should identify specific control measures you put in place to protect your employees. It could be your sanitizing stations at the entrance and throughout the building, everybody wearing masks, identifying spots in the warehouse, wherever that's 6 feet apart. So you've got to have a plan in effect to protect your employees. Because again, if you don't comply, then guess what? You increase your exposure of liability. Again, not an attorney, not an insurance guy, but knowing that somebody catches COVID at your place and you don't have a prevention plan in effect, you will be liable. Okay. Again, specific control measures you put in place to protect your employees and what they need to do to protect themselves and their coworkers. So I would suggest some additional policies in your employee handbook that talk about COVID-19, talk about wearing masks, keeping safe distance, things of that sort. We'll talk about some other places in the workplace as we go through this. But again, the key message here is to protect yourself and protect your businesses and protect your employees. Okay, there's a website there for the California Safe at Work article. You can download a template to create and add addendums, and gives you the appropriate steps for your COVID prevention program. Again, it's something that you could probably do yourself if you want to spend the time and effort, or you can certainly contact a legal entity. And again, I can refer you to a couple of folks, but there's a cost associated with this. Again, depending upon your measure for tolerance of doing the work or just wanting to get it done. So again, I will have Brooke email out this presentation so that you guys can look at that website. But it's important. One of the key things here is to implement your COVID prevention program. Okay, I'm not sure how many of you have employees that return to work or how many have returned from home. But again, you need to have a program that outlines how you're going to protect your employees to prevent potential exposure/liability. Okay, Cal OSHA emergency COVID regulations now in effect. Okay, went in effect on November 30th. Safety regulations apply to nearly every business in California and contain many new requirements for employers. These include, let's get to them. Creating the plan, which we've talked about. So again, part of this presentation, you're going to see some duplicate information. And the reason for that is I want to make sure that these concepts or these points are really emphasized and hammered home so that you're aware of them and that you hopefully will implement them. You have to report workplace COVID outbreaks to the local health people and provide free COVID testing to exposed workers up to 2 times a week. So some of you may be fortunate to have employees back in the workplace, but then your exposure again and your liability have increased dramatically. You have to keep sick or exposed employees out of the workplace and continue to pay them while they cannot work. Now that could be vacation time, that could be unemployment, or that has to be salary. Okay, so you have to keep, and let me just say that some people may say that they're sick, and there's always the opportunity or chance for fraud. I hate to say that, but some people do that, and I'm familiar with some people saying that they were sick and they weren't. Can you require them to getting testing? Absolutely. Additional requirements for employees to provide housing. Well, we won't get to that one. It's in the agricultural industry. Okay, again, I'm going to hammer this home as I've said it before. You have to have a written COVID-19 prevention program. If you don't, create one right away. As soon as we get off the webinar today, jump on that template and start creating one. because when employees start coming back to work, that's going to increase your potential liability. Okay, now in effect, except if you've only got one employee. So if you're a startup or a small business, you don't have to have or don't have contact with other people, you're okay. Employees working from home, you're okay. Okay, and I'm gonna have to move my little box around. The emergency requirements are temporary, will last for 180 days. That was back in November. And of course, that can be extended at any time. And Governor Newsom just extended the purple tier for an additional 4 weeks, at least in Orange County and Riverside County. So this is something in flux, okay? And with the increase of COVID-19 cases, I'm hoping that it only lasts for an additional 4 weeks, but that remains to be determined. Okay, so let's talk about some, in effect, again, some of these are repeats. Okay. Went into effect on November 30th, cover your prevention program, testing, wages, housing, and transportation requirements. They apply to every California business, except places employment with one employee. Again, repeat. I want to make sure that you know this employee's working from home. And what liability do we have if they're working from home? We'll talk a little bit about that here in just a second. And employers covered by Section 5199, which are your healthcare providers, drug treatment programs, and homeless shelters, and what have you. Okay, new requirements. Again, I'm just giving you the information more than once. Provide COVID-19 testing at no cost to employees after an exposure at the workplace. Okay, and how do we know if we've got an exposure at the workplace? We'll get to that here in just a second. Paying wages to employees who cannot work to a COVID-19 exposure on the job. Now, whose job is it to determine if that employee caught it on the job or off the job? We'll discuss that here in just a second. And then you got to report COVID-19 cases to the local health department. Okay, again, I'm going to hammer it home. Okay. Employers must provide COVID-19 testing to employees exposed to someone at work who recently tested positive for COVID-19. Okay, additional testing requirements apply during workplace outbreaks. Okay, so again, you've got to provide the testing if they were exposed at someone at work. Now, we don't know if that person at work got exposed at your workplace or if they got exposed at a family gathering. That's the dilemma. Okay, so the safe thing to do is you've got to provide testing to employees, because you certainly don't want them to again, say that they caught it at your place and you failed to react and comply with the law. Okay. It's during working hours, check with the health department for information on testing and free testing resources in your county. So the testing may be free depending upon your healthcare provider or whatever else is out there. Wage continuation. Again, doing business in California is not fun in a lot of areas, and one of them is compliance and rules and regulations. So employers must send employees home with COVID-19. Okay. Can you prevent them from entering the workplace? We'll get to that in just a second. So absolutely, you've got to protect your work environment. Okay. They can use, you can use employer-related sick leave and other COVID-19 leave and benefits from public sources to cover wages. Now, I'm not an expert on the payroll program that went into place on Tuesday. I would certainly reach out to maybe somebody at the chamber or somebody at the SBDC that's an expert on applying for some of these payroll forgiveness programs. Okay, the process is dubious, but again, it's well worth it if you can secure some funds. Okay, employers must prove the exposure was not work related if you're not going to pay the employee to stay home. Again, that's a vast gray area, because unless you go on their social media and saw that they were at a birthday party, they weren't wearing masks, it's going to be hard to prove that they didn't catch it at work, especially if they come to work. So I can't give you any direction on that, but if you know that they've gone to a ball game and you can substantiate the fact that other people at that event may have been infected or quarantined, whatever have you, you might be in a position, but I certainly would want to make sure that your employees are free from the virus because if they catch it, they're going to say they got it at work. Why? Because they want to get paid. I hate to say that. That's just a fact of life. Questions. Can you mandate the employees wear a mask while working? What if they work in a cubicle? What if they work in a separate office? Okay, so you can mandate they wear a mask. The simple answer is yes. And your prevention program should stipulate this guideline. You want to protect, show that, because if you do face any litigation, you want to show that the prevention program did have in mind your employee's safety. And part of that would be the 6 feet, the hand washing stations perhaps, and certainly wearing masks. What if they work in a cubicle? Yes, they need to wear a mask in the cubicle, even though this is their private space, the cubicle is not enclosed. So the air will travel over the cubicle barrier. So yes, they need to wear a mask. And what if they work in a separate office? And the simple answer is you have your own office and it's enclosed and the door is enclosed and no one is around. So you're working in an office on a Saturday morning and no one is around, you can leave your mask off. But I would stipulate in the prevention program that no matter where you are in the premises, that you need to wear a mask. Another question, what should I do about my break room? Keep it as a common area. And the suggestion would be to close your break room and establish an outside space. Protect yourself, and it may be optically that you have an outside area against any allegations. So I would, again, suggest that you close your break room and come up with a picnic table or an area outside the building that's got some ventilation and maybe some markings that they're 6 feet apart, a signage that says, please wear your masks. You know, of course, if you're by yourself, you're eating lunch, you're not going to wear your mask. But again, optically, you need to give the employees and Cal OSHA the impression that you've got your employee safety first and foremost. And that's the mantra, if you will, of OSHA, is employee safety. And that should be the first mantra of your organization, because employees are your most important asset in most cases. Okay, so some different things other than COVID. Let's change gears just a little bit. Okay, so California Rights Act expansion went into effect on January 1st. 12 weeks of unpaid leave with reinstatement rights. And the reinstatement rights mean if I leave for 12 weeks, on a family leave, I come back in the same position that I am when I left. So you have to hold that position open for an employee if they leave on a California family leave. Now it applies to 5 or more employees. California is just killing us because it was previously 50 or more within a 75-mile range. Now it's you've got more than 5 employees. And in my opinion, and whether or not you want to hear it, it's sort of detrimental to the small business, because if I got 8 employees and if I've got a controller and he or she leaves for 12 weeks of unpaid leave, that could be detrimental to my business. And that's why before the threshold was always 50. Now it's 5 or more. And it now includes self, child, parent, but more importantly in the red, grandparent, grandchild, or sibling. So if I need to take care of my grandfather or grandmother because they're ill, and I can go on 12 weeks unpaid leave. Now that legislation may change nationally because the current administration, I believe, wants to make that a paid leave. And I'm, again, hoping for small businesses that something like that does not go into effect. Now, on the bottom point there, both parents work for the same employer. Each parent gets 12 weeks. It used to be that together they could only take 12 weeks, but now each parent would get 12 weeks covered for baby bonding leave. Again, unpaid. So again, but this could be really difficult for a small business with 5 or more employees. Okay. Employers must continue to pay for health benefits. May be intermittent. What I mean by that is I'm going to take 4 weeks in March, and then I'm going to take 6 weeks in June and 2 weeks in November. So it could be intermittent, but a total of 12 weeks. And again, the big point there is must return employee to the same job. So yeah, what do you do if you hire a temporary employee to fill the controller position? Again, that's a different discussion, but people are eligible to come back to the same position. Okay. And right now there's a pilot program for mediation with employers between 5 and 19 employees. In other words, they can't file a lawsuit if I didn't return them to the same job. There's a pilot program for mediation arbitration and actually the pilot program went on 124. So The safest thing to do at this point would be to return them to the same job. Or if you didn't have, if you needed to fill the position, then I would certainly talk to my legal counsel about a potential separation agreement. Again, not an attorney, sorry. AB 5 amendment, AB 2257, went into effect 9/4 of 20. Okay, I think we all know about AB 5, which took a lot of our independent contractors and made, we're going to make them employees. And again, that was detrimental to the gig economy, and there's still some lawsuits going back and forth. And I read in yesterday's paper that the service union is trying to overturn AB 2257. So this is something that's in flux. I think as employers, we'd love everybody to be an independent contractor, but because of the control requirement, we have employees. So employees, again, can be your greatest asset, but also your greatest source of potential liability. But you do want to make sure that you classify your employees correctly. Again, a different discussion, but suffice to say that if I classify somebody as an independent contractor and I don't pay payroll taxes, I don't pay workers' comp, and I don't pay them benefits, and lo and behold, they should be classified as an employee, you've got some penalties to pay, as well as back wages, taxes, workers' comp premiums, et cetera. So it's important that you classify anybody that works for you appropriately, so that, again, I don't sell insurance, but I'm familiar with workers' compensation. You can't classify them as a clerical employee if they drive a forklift. Again, different discussion, but I can certainly answer some questions for you on that. So the big thing here is free from control, in fact, and per agreement. They've got to agree that they're an independent contractor. So if you're going to hire an independent contractor, I would create an independent contractor agreement, because they need to file their own W-9 and 1099 at the end of the year for their taxes. So I would come up with an independent contractor agreement. Now, that said, look at B, performs work outside usual course of company business. So if I've got a computer programming company and I hire Debbie to do computer programming for me and as a project, she's not an independent contractor, because my usual course of business is computer programming. So the typical relationship in the past is I can hire them on a project basis, make them an independent contractor. That's not the case now if that's my usual course of business. Now, if I'm a grocery store and I hire somebody to do some computer programming for my registers, I can classify them as a 1099 with some stipulations. Again, it's the control factor, and there's a test that they have to pass to be an independent contractor. Many of you may be familiar with that. But I can't provide workspace. I can't provide a laptop. I can't direct them to come to work on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays, because at that point, they become an employee. So I've always said, if it looks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's an employee. Again, and your liability exposure increases dramatically once they're on your payroll as an employee. But down below, the ABC test still applies for most situations. A few corrections, okay? The ABC test is still the standard, the Barilla test, okay? An exemption from AB 5 does not automatically valid independent contractor classification, okay? Uber driver, they've successfully have separated themselves from AB 5, but there's some stipulations within AB 2257 that they need to be in compliance with. So they're not an employer, but they're certainly providing more than the independent contractor relationship. Okay, workers must meet the Barilla test to be properly classified as independent contractors. So I'll give you some information on the Barilla test, but I would certainly Google that sometime before you hire an independent contractor to make sure that they are one. Okay, so the Barilla test is a requirement list outlining the qualifications, okay, of whether a worker be classified as an independent contractor. Now, it behooves employers, or most employers, are really excited about perhaps having, someone as an independent contractor, because then I'm not paying workers' comp premiums, I'm not paying payroll taxes. So the cost of having an employee is dramatically less if they're an independent contractor. However, that being said, we've got to make sure, again, they're classified correctly so that we don't expose ourselves to potential liability. So under Barilla, the primary test was known as the right to control test, determining whether the hiring entity controlled the manner and means of accomplishing the desired result. So again, if you hire somebody as an independent contractor, you can see, I'd like to get this project done by May 1st, But other than that, you can't really exercise any control. Maybe some periodic update meetings and things of that sort. But I want to see a report with your progress by Friday at 9 a.m. And oh, by the way, here's a laptop and a company email address that you could use. Again, you're exercising control, and in fact, at that point, they become an employee. So again, you want to, as best you can, distance themselves, but you still want to make sure that you get the quality of service and/or work that you were looking for. Okay. Okay, the factors. Okay, whether the person performing work is engaged. Let me move my box again. I'm sorry. In an occupation or business that is distinct from that of the company. So again, they can't be a person that's performing work in what your company does the majority of the time. Again, I'll use computer programming. I can't hire a computer programmer as an independent contractor because I do computer programming as a business. So again, that was one of the stipulations with AB 5 and now AB 2257. Before, people would hire independent contractors to do a computer programming project in a software company, and they can treat them as such, but not anymore. Okay, again, whether it's part of the company's regular business, and whether or not we supply the equipment, tools in place. Okay, so I want them to work from home. Okay, and you buy your own laptop and you provide your own paper. Okay, so again, not doing you don't want to provide any of the equipment. You may provide some expense money, but you certainly aren't going to provide the tools to do the job. That's their job. That's their role as an independent contractor. Okay, let's see, the kind of occupation. I'll let you guys read those bullet points. It's a tricky and still gray area on whether or not you can classify these folks again as an independent contractor. Okay, how long are the services going to be performed? Again, that could be in your independent contractor agreement where you outline the services that you'd like, and you could give a completion date or the date that you'd like to have this completed by. Absolutely. Okay, the payment method. Okay, you want to make sure that you're not creating an employer-employee relationship. Okay, so again, in your independent contractor agreement, again, I would stress this. No matter how big or how small the project, that you create an independent contractor agreement and they sign it knowing that they're not becoming an employee. Okay. Copy for them, copy for you in their little 1099 file. Okay. And let's keep going here. Some exemptions. So you do have a few exemptions from AB 5. Okay. So business to business exemption, I can be a plumber and I could hire a electrician as an independent contractor to do some work in my building. Okay, single engagement, if I just hire them for one particular project and it's not a residual or continual project, that could be an exemption. Okay, you have your referral agency exemption. I can refer people. Okay, so if I'm a law firm and someone calls and said, hey, I need some paralegal services and I don't perform those services, I can certainly refer them to somebody, and then that person's an independent contractor. And then you got your professional services exemption, like your appraisers and home inspectors, again, because you don't control them, okay? And your music industry and performer exemption. Some of your musicians and things of that sort are still considered independent contractors. So that in the trucking industry is what really was the driving force for AB 2257. So you still do have some exemptions that you can keep people as independent contractors. Again, I can provide you some additional information on the requirements and more information in detail on these specific categories. Okay, Senate Bill 685. Okay, Cal OSHA reporting requirements effective the 1st of January. Okay, you must do the following within 1 business day of receiving notice of a potential exposure to COVID. Yeah, we're back on COVID. I'm sorry, I thought maybe we would get away off some of the negative news, but if someone comes in, if you're notified that someone has been exposed or has COVID-19, you have 1 business day to do the following: provide written notice to all employees of potential exposure who are on the same work site as a qualifying individual. Now, if you've got multiple locations, you've got one in Temecula, you've got one in Corona, and this was in Temecula, you only have to provide notices to the people in Temecula, unless, of course, that person made a delivery in Corona. If you're on multiple floors and the guy or the woman was on the first floor and was exposed or has COVID and never made it to the second floor, then you don't have to provide notice to the people on the second floor. But how likely is that? So you need to make sure that you give notice to the work site. Okay, so again, work site, same building, store, field, floor, etc. Qualifying individual is positive for COVID-19, and the infectious period is again as per California Department of Public Health guidelines. So yes, it's a lot of work on being an employer. Being an employer again is not fun sometimes, and this certainly is one of them. So if you know someone that's been exposed to COVID-19, you have to give written notice. Now, the written notice again is another thing in flux. Can I send emails? Can I put notices up? And I've got a question here coming for you that I think might answer that question. Okay. You write written notice to the representative of the employees of potential exposure if it's a union shop. So again, if you're dealing with Teamsters or the service industry, you've got to let the rep know that someone's exposed in your workplace. Okay. Just want to give you the additional information. Okay. So provide employees who may be been exposed and their representative with information regarding COVID-19 related benefits. Okay, so you have to give them this as well. Okay, they can use accrued paid time off, unemployment, family medical leave, unpaid protected time off, other paid leave of absence. Okay, so you've got to give them the information so that they can get the appropriate, let's say, wage and compensation in place. Okay. Now, the important thing here to note too is retaliation. Okay. If someone has come into your workplace and has been exposed to COVID-19, just let me say that you can't retaliate to any of the employees. I may not need to tell you that, but the retaliation penalty sometimes is more severe than the actual penalty itself. So there's no retaliation that you can take to an employee that has contracted or said that they did get COVID and they didn't get COVID. So please take that into high consideration and retaliation, anti-discrimination. They are protected. Now, again, that being said, an article in the paper this past week was whistleblower complaints have skyrocketed and whistleblower payments have skyrocketed because people working from home now know that maybe things that were happening at the workplace weren't legal, weren't ethical, perhaps, and they didn't say anything at the workplace because they were at the workplace. So whistleblower payments and complaints have skyrocketed. So the only reason I'm saying that is with employees, idle hands and idle minds sometimes create idle comments and accusations, whatever the case may be. But whistleblower accusations have skyrocketed during the COVID quarantine and work at home orders. So just be aware of that, and hopefully everything is proceeding nicely at your place of business. Okay, so then you have to notify all employees and subcontractor workers and their representative of a disinfection and safety plan. Again, this is part of your COVID prevention plan, but you want to have something that says this is what you're going to do if you're exposed. For example, Walmart will announce that they're closing, let's say, the Upland location for deep cleansing. So if someone's tested positive for COVID-19, you've got to come up with a plan that's going to clean the facility so that your employees feel comfortable and safe returning to the workplace. As highlighted there in red, English plus the majority employee language. So if you've got a Hispanic workforce, that's part of it, or whatever other ethnicity or language you may have in the workplace, you have to have it in 2 languages. Okay, and if you need a translator or a firm, let me know. Of course, I have that in my back pocket as well. Okay, so again, Assembly Bill 685, employers on notice of potential exposure. When a public health official or medical provider tell you, notice from an employee or their emergency contact that they're positive, or if they've tested positive through some testing protocol that you have in place at your place of employment, and then notice from a subcontracted employer of exposure. So if I have, again, someone coming in to do electrical work in an office and I get a notice from them, I've got to let my employees know that we've been exposed through a subcontractor. So there's a lot of things that you need to do as an employer to make sure the employees are safe. Now, I certainly hope that we want our employees to be safe, but there's certainly a lot of administrative work on behalf of an employer to keep in compliance. Okay. So again, more on Assembly Bill 685. You've got to notify a local public health department within 48 hours of an outbreak. An outbreak is 3 or more positive cases within 14 days. So, I mean, in addition to running your business, now you've got to run a medical clinic or a medical administration department in your business. And again, I'm not trying to be facetious. It's just that there's a lot of work to do, and you still want to concentrate on growing your business. So again, this is what you have to provide: the number of cases, names, and occupations. That does not violate the Privacy Act because, again, of the health and pandemic situation. Address of the work site, any other pertinent information. I'm not sure what you'd put there. Maybe number of employees in the particular department, whatever else you think would be pertinent. And you need to continue to update the health department. And the big thing here again is no retaliation. I'm mad at Debbie because she came in with COVID. She should have known about it because she was feeling sick, but she came to work anyway. And I've got 4 other employees that have COVID. I'm not happy with Debbie either, but you can't retaliate. And you've got to maintain these records for 3 years. So in addition to employee files, now you've got a COVID file. So again, the administrative effort and cost on these, again, I can't speak to. It's just something that, again, that you need to do to be in compliant with the law. So some sample questions. If you're taking temperatures as employees and they enter the workplace and someone displays a high temperature, can refuse entry to that employee? And the answer is yes. Okay, if they have a temperature higher than 100.4, then you do not have to let them into the workplace. You can send them home. Now, again, you send them home. Now, payment is continuation of wages is an issue, but I certainly don't want to bring somebody into the workplace if they've got a high temperature. Now, we've gone into, I won't say we got into restaurants, but if we go to the hospital like Kaiser, they'll take your temperature outside the building. I did sneak in and get a haircut several months ago. They took my temperature at the door. So, and again, I'm still looking for a place that will cut my hair. So that's why we don't see my pictures, because I need to be shaven. So again, 104, you can send them home. Okay, in the instance of a larger workforce, for example, a warehouse, would a notice on the point of entry or common area suffice as notice to exposure? Because I'm thinking it'd be hard to walk around and give 100 people a written notice that they've been exposed. So the answer there is posting notices in these areas is a way you generally communicate employee safety, where your safety posters are and your employment posters. That's where you'd put it up. Your time clock, that's where you'd put it up. At the points of entry and exit, that's where I would put up the notices. And I think optically you're covered because you've notified all the employees. And simply by word of mouth too, when other people see the notices, they're going to tell the other employees about it. But it would be best practice to give each employee a separate notice, again, if that's possible. But to do what I mentioned in terms of the time clock and the employee poster area, that would certainly give you the optics that you've notified the employees. Okay, can I require my employees to take a COVID-19 test as a condition of entering the workplace? And the answer is yes. Okay, updates COVID employer guidance to address this question. Okay, the required testing is permissible. Okay, but again, who's going to pay for it? Okay, most of the testing can be done free by a healthcare provider. Okay, but again, if you're concerned that someone's been quarantined for 10 or 14 days, you can require them to take a COVID-19 test before entering the workplace. Okay, because again, your major emphasis here is employee safety. Okay, and if you think again that they're a direct threat to the workforce, you can take the appropriate steps, but not retaliation. Final thoughts. Okay, and then there's a few other I have a couple more final thoughts here for you. If someone gets infected and discloses this in the workplace, again, you need a written plan on disinfection and safety. I'm going to hammer that home, and the COVID prevention program. Okay. Other business. Okay. As of January 1st, we had the expansion, which I talked about, but we also had the mandated reporter. Let's get to those things. Okay. 12 weeks of unpaid leave, 5 or more employees. Okay. And the threshold is lower, allowing 12 weeks of job protection. Okay. So again, just some repeat information. This isn't all the legislation that took effect January 1st, but again, I tried to give you the most important initially. Okay, mandated reporter. Okay, expand the list of mandated reporters to include human resource professionals. So if you do human resources at your business and you employ minors or persons whose duties require direct contact with and supervision of minors in the performance of minor duties in the workplace. If you hire a minor and you're in human resources, you're a mandated reporter. If that person comes into your office and discloses information that's detrimental to that person, then you're a mandated reporter, and you have to let them know that if this conversation continues, you're obligated to let them know whatever the particular situation is. Okay, so again, human resource people are mandated reporters. Now, does that apply to Debbie that does accounts payable and human resources in a small company? I think the simple answer is yes. She's performing some human resource functions. So she needs to let that person know that, again, any further disclosure of this person will require, I can't keep this confidential. Okay, so again, someone comes in your office and say, hey, can you keep something confidential? And you say, sure, depending on what it is. And they disclose something that's inappropriate is happening in the family. You need to let them know that you need to report this. Now, does that put you in any position of liability if you don't report it? And I would say that the simple answer is yes. So always act on the best of caution. Okay, and then one final thought, the mileage rate of the IRS went up on December 22nd for 2021. It's now 56 reduction. It's 56.0 cents per mile. So it did go down a little bit from 57.5. So that's the new rate for any employees that are driving on company business. Again, different discussion. If Debbie goes to the post office to pick up the mail or does banking, she is on company business and she needs to be reimbursed for her mileage. A lot of employees don't know that, and a lot of employers don't know that, but if they're conducting business in their personal vehicle, they need to be reimbursed 56.0 cents per mile. And that's different from a salaried salesperson who may get an auto allowance. Okay. And I put time for questions, and I'm not sure that we've got any questions. And I'm looking at the chat screen, but I would encourage you to email me at pflaherty@iesmallbusiness.com if you need some clarification or some additional information on the topics we discussed today. Now, again, Brooke will be sending out the copy of the PowerPoint, and this again has my contact information in it. But again, I do a part-time HR consulting for the Small Business Development Corp. Again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an insurance guy. I do have resources if you need resources in areas that I can assist you with. But I'm sure there's going to be a cost associated with that, but I give you a couple of resources to choose from, and then you can select one for yourself based on communication or conversation. Okay. We do have more legislative updates at the Small Business Development Center Zoom meeting scheduled on the 24th of February. I'm not sure if you want to go and contact IE Small Business. We'll talk about best practices and some COVID updates on Wednesday, the 24th of February. Again, I'm not sure if Brooke's going to invite me back for a session in February regarding this topic, but you're certainly invited to contact the SBDC to get some information and other resources on the PPP program. We've got excellent people that are assisting people with loan applications and things of that sort. Some of our locations, I'm based out of Riverside, but it's been a long time since I've been at the Riverside office, been working remote. But these are our additional locations. We do have an office in Menifee and Moreno Valley, and Temecula. Okay, but the main offices are in Riverside and Ontario. And I think that's it. Brooke, are you still with me? Oh, you're muted. Brooke, all yours.
Yes, hi. For some reason, I couldn't unmute myself. Thank you so much, Patrick. We appreciate all of your information. That was very informative. And like you said earlier, I will be sending out a follow-up email with your slides and your contact information and a copy of this video as well.
Okay. Well, certainly glad to be of assistance and maybe provide some tidbits of information. And again, if you need some clarification or some more information, please feel free to reach out to me.
Great. Thank you so much, Patrick. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, ma'am.